Hey there, it's Nolen with Nolen Walker Academy. We're going to talk about the number one Google ranking factor that no one talks about. So first, I want to start out with what is a brand? And this is what we're going to talk about is branding. I'm going to give you a pro tip, not on here too, in just a second. A brand is how established a company is, especially online, but also offline. So it's the entire universe of what makes up this company, mainly from a digital marketing standpoint, is how we're going to reference most of it. Do people search for your company name naturally? It's actually a ranking factor. People type in the company name. Google thinks, oh, people like this. That's a branded signal. Is your brand synonymous with its primary topic or category? Do people talk about your brand with other people? So one thing I want to talk about too, besides the fact that we're talking about branding for ranking, is that branding is a conversion item. So if your company isn't on enough platforms, look at your brand as the universe of digital material that could show up. So not just the design and content, but the Google account, the map, the Google business profile, if it's local, the reviews and the reputation, the other platforms where somebody can legitimize your brand or feel comfortable with it, such as YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or a podcast. So as people see reviews, logo, familiarity, it builds in them their willingness and ability to do business with you. The conversion from branding alone, combined with being found online, is the single biggest misunderstood thing that we've ever seen. And people don't understand that branding in and of itself denotes how someone shows up in ranking, but a branded, well-branded presence in a multitude of ways creates conversion. Okay, so branded signals. Overview. Google looks for specific signals when evaluating brands. Branded search, exact match or partial name match. Domain name, does your brand match your domain name? And mentions, both linked and unlinked mentions on the web or social media. So one of the things about a brand is user intent and topical relevance. So if it's an arborist, and they don't have the word arborist in their name, it hurts the branded signaling because the user intent of the user on Google isn't finding the arborist that they were looking for in the first place. So if that user intent and topical relevance flows from the name to the name on Google to the .com or the URL with the name in it, if it does flow in that way, the user intent is met and the topical relevance is there and the ranking's better. That isn't all there is to do with branding, but that certainly has a help. So pro tip, think about which branded search terms you use. So you can think about this yourself. I'll give an example of this, and this is one small aspect of the brand as it relates to it showing up and being synonymous with that company. If it's the arborist and somebody's looking, let's use an HVAC company. Some HVAC companies will use the word mechanical, be Joe's Mechanical. Not Joe's Heating and Air, but the client was looking for heating and air or air conditioning. Google will look at it and say, does this match with this category for the brand? And they'll be confused by it. Google may not be confused, but they know that the user's confused. And they don't necessarily associate the word mechanical with air conditioning and heating. But if they had the word air, heat, HVAC, it's called LSI or latent semantic indexing. They would associate it with that category of things. So when you're branding, it's important that the brand match the category. It flows through for user intent and topical relevance. All right, what about SEO? In my opinion, branding and all the stuff we're talking about is SEO, but let's talk about it in a little bit different format where people think about it. People hear the word SEO and just fly off the handle and think trickery or content only or this, but as the brand has a platform, people call, look at citations for this and things that you're listing around the web. But as the brand flows through properly, gets read by Google, has a proper user intent with topical relevance, as it's on Google and content and Facebook and Instagram and podcast and video or YouTube, then it begins to build the brand that is the SEO, that is the signals that they look at, okay? SEO takes brands to the next level and vice versa. SEO still matters and can take established brands to new levels online. The reverse is also true. Growing your brand will boost your SEO efforts. And good brands with mediocre SEO may still dominate depending on the competition. Smaller towns, most of the stuff that we're going to train you for is local business, right? So some of this might refer to a big company, but in a small town, when things are done poorly, you can still see some things say, hey, Nolen, I saw something working and it didn't fit all that criteria. You probably didn't in a major town with lots of competition. So you go to Dallas and you're going to have massive competition, and everything better be syncing up for the brand to do what it needs to do and optimize online. So branded from the idea of branding, branding from the idea of the digital world of that brand, different platforms, and branding from the standpoint of it syncing up. But if you're in Topeka, Kansas, Topeka doesn't have as much competition, and you can make a few flubbers, a few mistakes, and still have things work out for you and build a brand. But I will say this, if you're in Topeka and somebody else hits all the cylinders, they'll come up and go whoosh, and have a chance of shooting right past you in ranking. Okay, pro tip, use keyword research to measure branded search volume. All right, and closing the brand gap. Non-essential established brands must close the gap with low-hanging fruit. And all that means they might start out with what we call long-tail keywords. Big brands get lazy and fail to optimize for long-tail keywords. Frankly, big brands get lazy and don't do anything. And so I'll tell you a way to look at this too and try to wrap this up for you. Look at a horse race with horses running around the track. The algorithm judges hundreds of things. Hundreds and hundreds of things are judged by the algorithm. And you know some of them, but you don't know all of them. As a new horse gets on the track, he's running 5 times faster, but the old horse, part of the algorithm with age and tenure and trust, he's ahead. But as the new one begins to run faster and the old one's being remiss in their duties, new brands can come up. And again, we're not talking about national stuff usually. We're talking about roofers and plumbers and arborists and lawyers and restaurants and dentists. And all these types of brands is what we're referring to, okay? You can have a brand come up, do lots of things properly with high quality white hat SEO signaling and branded signaling to Google, which is SEO, and have that recognized and gain ground quickly. To start out with, some of those new companies might use a long tail keyword. They might want the word arborist if they're an arborist, but they might show up first for oak wilt treatment or root flare issues on a tree or something else. So you'll add some content in for them and go after a myriad of categories. And as you continue to run that horse faster legitimately, he will catch up for more and more things and eventually just have a better website, because the big brands absolutely get lazy and stop marketing. So long tail, site speed, user experience, site structure, yes, yes, yes. All of these little things are points, which is SEO. Engage in brand building exercises like networking, public relations, and outreach. And when you're already paying for something like the Chamber of Commerce or the BBB, make sure you get your link back and pull a little link back. All these little signals help the authority of that brand in that market. And really the authority is trust through Google and signaling for a good user experience. We could go on and on about this sort of thing. Getting more reviews can precipitate brand awareness. I agree with all these things. Of course, this is stuff that you should be doing. All sorts of training as well that we provide for this. I hope this helped. Brand awareness, I want to bring it back one more time. Branding is not only important because it is SEO, as it gets listed, not just in citations. I think people do a disservice when they're just talking about citations. I'm talking about an active YouTube, active podcast. And now, depending on what you're doing, you may not do a podcast or something like this. I do recommend for a digital marketing agency though. But as that brand gets reviews, reputation, pages, some links from credible sources, a couple of things around the web, and it has user intent and it has topical relevance, and everything syncs up, and then it gets positive, good signals regularly, that brand's going to pop on a digital basis. And when someone goes to try to look at it and it pops up and they can validate good things like video content, reputation with reviews, etc., they're going to convert so much faster than you think they would have. We see people that show up without a network of branding items around the web. They just don't convert it anywhere near. We're talking about hundreds of percent more conversion of people that do come because of how that brand is read by Google, and ultimately the consumer that goes to look and try to validate before they pick up the phone or email. I love this topic. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next video.